Welcome to Cancer and Peace. My name is Sean Stewart. I'm here to facilitate a conversation with our host, Peter Scalzo, on his 20-year cancer journey and to share a bit of life. And we've been in this series on miracles in the Bible of Jesus and just exploring the different levels of meaning in each one. And so last time we really talked about the compassion that God had. And so today we have something that maybe ties into that space a little bit, but it has a different look and feel.
Yeah, and I think just to mention the concept you had of a healing stew. You know, so you're making this stew, you're stirring it, and what ingredients go into the healing stew? And it's the healing stew of healing. What does it look like?
Yeah, and I think most people that have experienced a major illness, disease, are looking for, a full and complete healing. And part of what kicked some of this off was, hey, if we think about, that's what you're going to, what it takes to be healed or what it means to be healed. What we're finding is there's a lot of different recipes that are out here, and the stew looks quite a bit different for everybody. There's some things that some people are saying are absolute must ingredients. It must have certain type of, chunks of beef or something. Others like, I don't put beef in mine at all.
We also recognize there's a huge spectrum of beliefs within Christianity where we fall as far as our worldview and everything goes. There's just such a spectrum. And over 20 years, I've run into all kinds of, this is a sure thing to be healed, all kinds of methods and things that people have brought to me about healing, physical healing, beliefs and everything. So I thought, because I think I came up with this, it was let's just have fun in the scriptures talking about the different healing events that Jesus did. So we have a really cool one today, right?
Yeah. So last time we spoke about one that you had spoke on in front of a church a while back. And so you had a decent amount of knowledge on it. And this one is one that I had connection with from our organization, or a message we had shared on a Saturday event that we had. And I'll tell a story when we get into it a little bit that it spoke to me in a big way. But to set the scene, Jesus has been out preaching for a long period of time, and he and his disciples all get into a boat, and they decide to go across, I believe it's the Sea of Galilee, and they're going across Galilee overnight. And so they're getting away, and during the night, a large storm comes up, and it's a ferocious storm, and the disciples all think that they're going to die, and Jesus calms the waters, and they come to a recognition that, hey, this person can even calm the wind and the waves. And you might think that's the miracle that I'm wanting to speak about, but that's just a setup for where I'm wanting to go to is where their destination was. And I think it's the Gerasenes, I believe, a place that he had sailed across to. And so they show up at this place, and a man who is described as,
and the Gerasenes is the Gentile side of the lake or the sea.
Yeah, and you probably know you've traveled a lot.
I've been over there 7 times. Yeah. So you can, first of all, Sea of Galilee is not a huge body of water, but it's big enough, and there's a mountain range, the Golan Heights, right to one side, and you can imagine how the winds and stuff would stir up the waters. I've never been there when there was a storm there. I would have liked to, but I never had. But so he's, on the one side, Capernaum and all that, where he did a lot of his ministry, this Jewish side where synagogues and Jewish culture and all that. And then he goes across the sea, and you mentioned the wind and all that, what happened. And that's a wonderful story, which maybe we'll talk about one day. That's one that I really love, how Jesus did that. But he enters this Gentile area.
Yep.
And so what's he greeted by? What were you saying?
He's greeted by a man who is described as being possessed by many demons. In fact, so many they called him Legion, because it was a legion of demons that were inside of him. And the man was naked. He could not be contained by chains or anything, because he was too powerful with this possession that he couldn't be controlled. And Jesus when he meets him there, this man comes up and throws himself down and says, "What do you want from me?" And because the demons recognize him as God, and then they beg.
They say Jesus, the Son of God. Yeah, they actually
yes
state his divinity.
They do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I think it's such a interesting thing that Jesus shows up. They recognize who he is, and then there's an action where Jesus is going to cast them out, and they beg Jesus to not have him throw them into the pit or something, and
the bottomless pit.
So they beg to be put into pigs, and so he cast them into the pigs. The pigs ran off the hill and all drowned. And that's an interesting story, because that, as you know, being in a Gentile area, there were pigs, which wouldn't have been on the Jewish side, because they don't see pigs as kosher, and so they're not allowed. But that was a hit to the industry in that area, and so people were not happy.
Yeah.
And ultimately, once, as the story plays out, they want Jesus to leave. They're afraid and upset.
Yeah, and it's like a display of God, right? And they're scared and upset. Leave us. We don't need this.
Yes. Yeah. So the effect of that is Jesus came and healed this man, and he restores him to his right mind. He's clothed again, and he's able to communicate, and you can see that there's an interaction there where this man is brought to an understanding of who God is. I would define it as a saving interaction. Not just did he heal him of the affliction of the demons, but I think he also saved his soul. And so, to me, the really interesting part of this passage is that the disciples and Jesus sailed across in a storm for the purposes of this one guy, to heal this one person. And then they get back in the boat, and the guy begs to come along, and Jesus said no. He commissions him. He's like, "Go and tell of what the Lord has done for you. That's your mission." And they leave. And I found that story really powerful for my own journey and what it meant. And it's funny, we were talking about this story in our organization at some point in time, and I remember we have a disability ministry here, and it was for an event that we were doing a teaching on, and we asked the people, there's like, "Hey, who do you relate to? Who do you identify with?" And people were going around, and I thought people would say, "Hey, I do identify with being this person is afflicted, or the demoniac, or whatever." And one of the members that's on we call them our resident volunteer staff, or they're part of our volunteers, raised his hand, and we're like, "Who do you identify with?" And he was like, "The pigs." And it was just like, whoa. Yeah, I understand why somebody might say that. It's like the feeling of, I'm not even at the level of the humanity that Jesus. I'm actually cursed. I'm at that level of state that I don't even see myself as being worthy of love and humanity. And that hit me hard when I heard that. I was like, wow. And the reason why that's such an important statement is, I think it is what God's trying to demonstrate in this story. Is like, a while back I had been if you've gone to Sight and Sound every now and then, they did the story of Jesus a while back, and this story brought tears to my eyes, because when it was depicted out, it was after this time, and I saw this, to see them go through the storm and Jesus come for one. That was the byline. It's like, he came for me. He came for the one. And to me, that is the power of this story, is that God comes for, we are so worthy, so valuable, that he'll come through a storm to meet us at our greatest need. And that is, we talked last time about this God of compassion. And you have to believe, or I believe, that Jesus came across with purpose and intent for the one. And that should speak volumes to each one of us as we're thinking about, this guy didn't come with faith again. he came and said, "What do you want?" Like the words that came out, "What do you want?"
Mm-hmm.
Not "Come save me, Jesus." It was, "What do you want?"
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus was there not because of his great faith; he was there because of his great need, and he had a great purpose for him. And so, so it speaks to me in how much God values us.
Yeah, I love the fact too that he not only did he have the physical issues of crossing the sea and the storm and all that, but the cultural ones too, with the Gentiles and the whole thing of being a Jewish rabbi and having to deal with the uncleanness of all that, like you were pointing out with the pigs. And Jesus was willing to cross all those barriers. And I love it because he was demonstrating to his followers that that's what the kingdom was about. His heart is for people. I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, what does it mean to be a Christ follower for me personally? And I said, it means for me to try to have a heart for people, for what's going on in people's lives. I think Jesus demonstrated that. And so I think that on a cancer journey, it's very comforting because it demonstrates Jesus' willingness to cross all kinds of barriers and to do whatever it takes to
what a great share,
reveal himself to me and to comfort me, and that to come in a place of compassion and comfort. I mean, sometimes I would have the tendency to say, who am I? There's how many billion people on earth right now, and I've got this cancer struggle going on, and yet he values me and he knows every hair in my head, the thoughts, and you know what I mean?
That's just what I want to talk about for a second. Because this story spoke to me for a reason that is in my own mind. The reason why I shared the guy with that said I identify with the pigs is this is a sense of self-worth. You may feel at the moment like you're all alone and not valued. And this story is all about sharing how valuable we are. And I had recognized for myself, I had wrestled with this theological question. I keep hearing in our Christian circles this idea that if you were the only one, that Jesus would die for you. And I was like, no. No, he did it because there were however many billion people out there, and he's dying for some number of those, or if not all of them in one sense, depending on how you kind of view the world or view your theology works. But it wasn't for one. And I've been wrestling with that question, why do I keep hearing that? And as I saw this scene play out, I just sensed God's voice saying, no, I do come for the one. And let me show you the picture of that. And this story is a picture of God's individual care at our great need, meeting us in that moment. And he didn't make the pigs were so much less valuable than this guy, because that's part of what you see in the story when you get to the ground level, is that a herd of pigs going off into and drowning was nothing compared to the value of this person's life. Sure. And then when you see that Jesus came through a storm and he got back in the boat and there was nobody else that was ministered to, that speaks to this incredible story of he came for the one. He came for just the one person because he was that valuable. His heart and soul was that valuable that he would take time, the God of the universe would take. Even if you were just to say, well, maybe you're overstating the case, Sean, but who gets a day of Jesus's time? I mean, if you were to say, hey, do I deserve a day of God's time in earth terms? Do I deserve that compared to the billions of other people who are out there? This person was met at that level, that he came and he healed him, but he rescued him.
The picture I use personally is from a verse in Revelation where the picture is, behold, I stand at the door and knock, that verse.
Yeah.
And so do I want to invite him in to my life, to that situation? He said he'll come in and dine with me, which is a form of intimacy, right? And so, but it's a knock. It's not a force.
Yeah.
And I think about the demonic possession, this legion. They were speaking for him. It was a forceful possession, you know?
Yeah.
And Jesus doesn't do that.
That's really good. The final thing that I see that I like in this story that is, we talk about in this podcast quite a bit, and as you see it in different forms of what is the importance of our suffering, and you see that he's commissioned for his purpose. Like his suffering wasn't just to have Jesus come across and heal him. It's like, let me give you your real purpose, because the guy begs Jesus to come along, to ride along from here forward with him, and Jesus is like, no, I have a different purpose for you. And he commissions him for that. And so, and I think that's an important part of the story, is to know that for us to move forward, one of the things that, you and I both have read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and he talks about, what it takes to go through the suffering of the Holocaust, and the components to that are really important. And purpose is one of those things, is having a purpose that you're living for, and knowing that there's a purpose in your life that you can go through suffering. And so, and I think any cancer patient who is going through cancer is going to suffer, because, cancer by itself untreated will cause you to suffer, and treated, it has its suffering that goes along with that. The treatments themselves are suffering for many, especially chemotherapy or the surgeries and the healing from that. And we see in this story that suffering doesn't come without purpose, that Jesus, I think at the same time, is commissioning that suffering to meet a greater purpose. And we may not always know that, but I think he's given us a picture of that. There was an importance to him giving a commissioning this, and it's not the purpose that this guy asked for. It's a purpose that Jesus gives, because he asked for a different, hey, can I ride along with you? Can I go with you? And he's like, no, that's not the purpose. Stay here, go spread what I'm doing here. This is your purpose.
Yeah. It's an invitation for me to ask Jesus what my purpose is, not for me to tell him what my purpose is.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Isn't this interesting?
It's about surrender, right? And trust, and to for lack of a better word, just flow with Jesus' purpose, to just not try to force things and not try to figure it all out, but to let it unfold.
So in this story,
his timing. Yeah.
In this story, you have everyone in the region knew who this guy was, knew the depths of his depravity and the struggle. And in the very same breath, they see the power. His life represents the power of God as they see him anew. And so when I thought about that, I was like, well, it parallels your story too with your cancer. It's like the depth of your cancer journey struggle is the very tool that God is using for your platform today, to have a voice, to be his tool, to be his commissioned by him. And so there's a mirroring there and I think that's I'm going to call it a truism. It's not always precisely the case, but at least something when we think about the stew, I see this a lot, is that an ingredient that comes into the stew is that item, which is our greatest suffering, is most likely part of our greatest calling, or it ties closely to our greatest purpose.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, there's a verse that talks about the comfort that we've received.
Yes,
God wants us to give that comfort away.
Yeah,
and I guess the deeper the comfort, the deeper that we're able to give, right?
Yeah.
I think about too with this story, how it demonstrates the power of God, how it demonstrates his divinity, who he was, and his power. And I'm struck by the fact that, because the scripture talks about, here the demonic legion recognizes who he is, his spiritual position, Jesus, Son of God. The disciples watch him calm the storm in front of them. They've also seen a feeding miracle of whatever, I don't know, the 5,000 plus women and children, and 4,000. but the scriptures say that they still didn't believe because their hearts were hardened. So there's this hardening still that hasn't been. They don't recognize the full revelation yet. You know what I mean? And I think I just raised that right here, right now, to say that it's an act of God when we realize the revelation of Jesus. And I don't know how else to say it, but that there's an invitation for us to step into that revelation.
You've opened my mind to something too. I want to just because we've talked so much about going through the wall.
Yeah.
And going through the wall is an act of embracing our sufferings, both emotional and physical. And in many ways, the way our hearts are softened means that we have to be met in our sufferings. And so you described where the disciples got to see great miracles, but they weren't in their sufferings. They were in the sufferings of others.
That's good.
And it wasn't until Jesus met them in their sufferings, in their greatest time of need, that they changed from having hard hearts in their own vision to God's heart and adopting his vision.
Yeah.
And so I think that mirrors most of our lives, is that we actually have to go through, you and I call it the dark night of the soul, or the wall, but it is that thing which softens our heart to be able to see and experience and know God.
And for me, it would be, I am unable to lift myself out of the suffering in my own power.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw that demonstrated in my life. I was in unbelievable place of hopelessness, despair, devastation. I'm not going to live. 5% chance of survival. I got this huge surgery to recover from. And, I've been 10 years in the metastatic community now of a cancer that's a very difficult cancer. I've lost my train of thought, but
you were describing your wall. And so why that? Yeah.
Yeah. And, but I forget what I was describing it for. I just had a brain lapse.
Well, while you're thinking,
I know what I was getting to.
Yeah.
And in that, in the suffering and in the being broken, in that sense, I understand when Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." But it's that poverty of, I can't do it. I need you, Jesus, to do it in me and through me. And I think hardness of heart to me when I'm in that place is, I can do this.
I got this.
Yeah. I got this. So it was like Jesus gave them the Beatitudes, and I could just imagine if I was sitting there, I would have been scratching my head. Poor in spirit, what the heck is that?
Yes.
But going through suffering or just the trials of life, crises, all those things, and then realizing that, oh, wow, I really don't have control or power here.
Now we're at the heart of, we've talked about the healing stew.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the one ingredient that has to be there?
Poverty
of spirit. Without the broth, that's like the broth. It's like whatever other things you drop into that broth. If you don't have poverty of spirit, you don't have the key ingredient to the healing that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because everyone that we've talked about so far came with great need, and a need greater than what they could manage on their own. And so maybe I'm challenging myself as I think about this. Is there a case that I can think of where that wasn't the case? And so I'm going to ponder that for a bit. But I think
I know for me, the cancer, my first 10 years, I had 13 surgeries and a lot of stuff going, and big major surgeries, a couple of them. I was thinking my second surgery in 2010, I had sepsis at that time, and they had to isolate me in ICU and all that. But I had forgotten about that until I had this sepsis just the other day from this infection. But I was just thinking about this whole journey in them. But then I still had a sense of, like, I would say to people, I'm okay and God's got this and we're fine. I'm fine. But then the metastatic diagnosis, the huge surgery, and the laying in that hospital room knowing that I was going to pass. Right? That's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's when everything about me being able to handle this situation went out the window. It's gone. I can't do it.
Well, I think we've hit something that is the key ingredients for the stew.
Yeah.
And also this just incredible personal nature of the God who will take time out of and focus on you as an important, the value of your heart is so incredibly important to God that he will travel at great expense and cost to meet you where you are. What do you need to bring? Great need, poverty of spirit, a recognition of that.
Right. That part when Paul said, when I'm weak, you are strong. That tension of poverty of spirit with being strong. Yeah. It's good. It's good. I love that. That's the broth.
That's the broth. There's no stew without broth, I think. I mean, otherwise it's just
broth.
It's just meat and potatoes, right? It's not, or vegetables or something, but it's you have to have the broth for it to be
Is this a vegetarian stew? I always put meat in my stew.
I said meat and vegetables, but I know there are those, but I'm saying both of those still require broth, right? And so this is like what makes it stew itself is the fact that it has some level of broth with those other ingredients. And so this particular ingredient seems pretty universal because we've seen a lot of them that aren't universal, but this one does seem to be there. So we'll explore that more as we look at more of these.
Across the board, we're seeing poverty of spirit. So, I mean, I think that's the whole, I see your faith. Jesus is saying, I see your surrender and your belief in me, believing enough to surrender.
I think that's what I wanted to talk about with this episode. Just this God of great compassion who meets us at a individual caring level and who is calling us from our poverty of spirit. That's the way I would view this as such a incredible story. And I think it speaks to God's heart and why our response in that can be great peace and joy in the midst of that.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean. That's awesome.
Blessings, everyone.
Blessings.